Hello, everybody, and welcome to 312, the HRP podcast. I am Tom Simmons, your host for this episode, as always. However, you will not be hearing from me as often as you usually do. And that's because we have a very special episode of 312 today, in which we will be hearing about HRP's values statement. I'm not going to get too much into it because our CEO, Dan Titus, will be filling you in on exactly what that means and how we came about it. We have a couple of guests here to join us on the Work Hard segment, and if you're really desperate to hear from me, you can stick around until the Play Hard segment, which, as always, is also a video segment and you can check out on our YouTube channel, as well as hearing it in this feed. So stick with us, everyone. We have a long episode today, but a great one. Hello and welcome back once again to the 312 podcast. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the values statement and the survey recently conducted to establish the terminology that we will be hearing used in that value statement. And joining us on the podcast, we have today
Yvonne Alston, CEO of Indelible Impressions Consulting.
Tad Goetcheus, COO and President of HRP.
And
Dan Titus, CEO, HRP.
Excellent. And Dan is going to lead us off with a little bit of an explanation about what we will be hearing today.
Last year, we were working through the evolution of some of the strategic ideas that we have about how we're going to sort of develop the firm on a going forward basis. And one of the things that we've been working on is trying to enhance and evolve, curve the edges of this cultural thing that we have here at HRP. We call it 312. That's our synonym for culture. It's a thing that we've been doing. Sort of the whole firm was founded on this sort of casual, interpersonal, collegial sort of culture. And, we like to think that we've been doing it since long before it was popular, which is why we have our own synonyms like 312 for it. And Yvonne has come in to help us with our Jedi program, which is the next sort of logical evolution of what our culture is, and she's been doing a fantastic job. But we've had this mission statement for a long time, and the mission statement really kind of captures how we view our role as it relates to our clients, which obviously is important because in a services business, which is what we are. I mean, our business is our clients. It's inseparable from the idea of what we are. But the mission statement is sort of the way that we look at how we conduct ourselves externally, how we set our priorities with respect to how we engage with the world that we serve. And what we don't have is a value statement. And a value statement, from my perspective, is an internal facing statement that sort of talks about who we are unto ourselves. Yeah, they sort of talk to each other, who you are sort of should be present at work, but also present with your clients. Like we really want HRP employees because we think that they're the greatest on earth. I know that's a little biased, but I think that's an okay bias.
We'll allow it for
that's
today.
My personal bias. We really want our clients to experience our HRP staff because they're so wonderful, and that engagement between client and HRP service provider is really what makes this business work. So we started thinking about creating a value statement because we have values, but it's not written down anywhere. It might be, carved in an oak tree at the old office or something like that. But it's not a thing that's been taken down anywhere. And so we started thinking about that last year. And because HRP is all about its employees, it sort of occurred to the management team, Tad and myself, that if we're going to create a value statement, it's sort of as antithetical to the idea of HRP for Tad and Dan to sit down in an office and close the door and scratch out a value statement. So what we wanted to do was get, for the purpose of creating engagement, and by the way, be very honest about this, through the pandemic in a company like HRP, which is so socially involved with itself, the pandemic has been an extremely difficult burden for this company because we can't be together. No. And that's kind of what this company is all about. And we've done fine, so I don't mean to suggest otherwise, but it really has put a chink in our stride a little bit, if you will. So we're trying to get people to come back and re-engage, which they are. But, along those lines, we're thinking that a way to sort of foster some more engagement was to work through a value statement by engaging with HRP writ large to sort of come up with concepts from the people who work here to build around this idea of a value statement. We asked Yvonne and her folks to sort of be our moderator / mediator, I guess. And they conducted a survey across the company to sort of get input from the staff, words and whatnot that they associate with HRP values. And the purpose of what we're doing here today, because as I've already articulated, Tad and I had nothing to do with that.
No.
Totally blind. Today is our opportunity to hear the results of that survey. So in this podcast, Tad and myself will be reacting to the information that has been gleaned from the survey, which heretofore we have not seen yet. So this is our live reaction, and hopefully people will listen to this and get some joy and comedy out of it. So that's the point. So I'm going to turn it over to Yvonne to talk about what we did or didn't do.
Well, thanks, Dan and Tad and the HRP team for having me here today. This was an exciting project. It's not often, I will say, that organizations look at something like a value statement and say, for the sake of living out the principles of our culture in a very real, tangible way, are going to embark on a project like this and say, we're actually going to give this to the people. We're going to give this to the people that matter, the people that are going to be responsible for essentially walking this out. We're going to pass them the microphone, and we're going to allow them to speak loud and clear to us and tell us what it is that they're looking for, what they consider valuable, and what they consider important in terms of the values and the priorities within the organization that, as you so eloquently pointed out, get lived out externally, but they have to be born and bred and live and breathe here within HRP's walls, of course, in your respective states and different offices. But it's important to identify what those are, and then to come around. How do we then pull in the different elements of that accordingly to create something that people will understand and feel connected to? Because that's really at the heart of a value statement, is the connectivity to the words that are written, each and every single one within the statement. And so I just want to say that it's very new age in a way that you would all be doing this because it's such a rarity. So I think that, my hat's off to the two of you as the leadership of this organization, that you would have given the microphone back to the people. So with that, I almost feel like there should be a drum roll or something in here. So, hey, there's the impromptu. Love it. Okay, so the very first question in the survey to everyone was, considering everything that is important to how our business and employees work, please list below one of 5 words or terms that best represents a value of HRP. So based on the data aggregation that myself and my team did, the number one word that came up was flexible and nimble. Right? So independently, it was the most commonly used word to describe HRP's values. And it's representative of a similar quality and is about 10% of the overall responses. So with that in mind, flexible and nimble, what are your thoughts on that as the most commonly used term to describe HRP's culture?
Well, I think that is spot on.
Okay.
Because if you don't say I came to work with a mindset on a Monday with the 10 things I wanted to get done, if anybody goes 10 for 10, they're crazy. They'll get 2 out of 10 done because there's always another problem. There's always another situation. I'm going to be going on a plane. I'm grabbing sample containers and I'm heading here. And honestly, the variety keeps people fresh and excitement, and that's the flexibility and nimble part that they're mentioning.
Yeah.
It really, having an open mind is the flexible part. I believe having an open mind about new opportunities, being able to go into things that they have never experienced. They might fail, but they know they have the support or the phone call away to say, hey, am I doing this correct or incorrect, or where am I going with this? But nimble is absolutely something we live every day, and it could change even morning to afternoon.
Yeah.
It's the environmental world we live in.
Right.
So.
And I would think also for the spirit of the culture, and I don't know if, Dan, you want to address that, in terms of the flexibility, in terms of, I'm even thinking around, flexibility in when COVID hit, right?
Yeah.
And trying to very quickly put a solution in place that you all needed to be flexible around, but then also offering employees some levels of flexibility within the culture of the organization. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So this kind of tickles me, right? So when we were talking about, and I admitted when we were getting ready here that I hadn't really looked at the positive output, so I really hadn't. So I saw that the word was bolded, but it's interesting to me because in the preamble, they're talking about how we want our internal to align with our external, and this kind of goes right at that idea. So if you'll indulge me for a second, I'm going to read our mission statement. Right?
Yeah.
So our mission statement, which, by the way, we call Article 312, there's a theme there in case you hadn't noticed.
Love it.
Is to provide highly responsive and valuable environmental and engineering consultant services to our diverse array of clients by leveraging our commitment to client service, project delivery, and our ability to be nimble in today's ever-changing world, right? So, that's the thing that we're trying to demonstrate externally to our clients. And sort of like the ethos of HRP, like what it means to be a HRP, we can't be that externally. Like we can't be flexible. We can't be dynamic. We can't rise to the occasion and, shimmy to the right or shake to the left, which is not common in engineering because it tends to be a fairly rigid kind of thing.
Do you do that dance at 312?
I do that dance.
Shimmy to the. Okay.
I mostly just do to the right, but
you're going to show me after the podcast.
My left side's not.
Okay.
It's not. I just can't go left. I don't know why.
All
Need to work on that. But anyway, we can't be dynamic, flexible, and nimble and responsive to our clients' needs externally if we are rigid internally, right? So you kind of have to walk the walk, talk the talk. You are what you eat, kind of thing. I tell my 17-year-old who eats nothing but tan food that all the time. He's turning tan. That really tickles me because the idea that people think of this place as flexible. Yeah, that's what it is. And if we can be both that internally and externally, I think we're onto something that the vast majority of our competitors haven't figured out yet.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's good to hear that. I think when we talk about, different organizational cultures, that is one thing that is often lacks, is the ability to be flexible in perspective, the ability, we all have to have guardrails and rules and certain processes and procedures that we need to follow for various reasons, whether that's safety, right? Tantamount in your field. But I think the flexibility to work differently, to get to the final end goal and result, right? The diversity of perspective, right? That
100%.
Is required, right? When we think about the parallels to flexibility, I think that that's a big part of it. People don't always think of it that way, but I dare say that flexibility, there's a lot of different lenses in which you can look at that within an organizational culture and be able to identify that there.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing in the engineering discipline, and I think this is part of why so many of our competitors are so, I'm making the square sign, rigid. Engineering is thought of as this like really rigid application of science kind of discipline. Really, at the core of all of it, problem solving is about being flexible, right? It's about taking alternate routes to get to an endpoint because there is no one perfect solution for anything. And technical people kind of get wrapped around the post on that sometimes. They're like, well, this is the way we've always done it. Like, well, okay. Is there another way to do it?
Right.
There's always another way to do it. Is there a better way to do it?
Right.
What's
probably
interesting is being the COO, HR comes underneath me with recruitment, but also the retention of employees. So seeing how the mission statement is enacted, but how these values are coming about is great because we always have a phrase here. It's called HRP Timber, and we want to make sure people meet the values. We want to say, hey, shall we allow these people to come into our environment? And it's not the one manager making the decision, because we have several people typically in an interview, but it is going to be these values. And now it's all coming into place so people maybe can define these values a little bit more. Maybe they knew that, but now they just needed a little bit more polished. And it just hit me because when we mentioned flexible, especially in the last 2, 3, 4 years, we really can give examples of what flexible means. Everybody can say that, but we can demonstrate and give examples flexible without delving into the HR side.
Sure.
Obviously you can, but people are like, you're not making this up. And it's like, no, go talk to Helen, go talk to Paul, go talk to Steve, ask them. We're going to be we're an open book on this stuff. And it's neat to say that this is all coming together. So I'm excited for the rest of this value statement. Certainly.
Yeah. All right.
It really does feel like it's starting to come together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And sometimes, I always laugh, and we talked about this a little bit at lunch, Dan and I, with you could say something all day long, but maybe, Yvonne, you've done a great job where people are like, wow, they were saying actually the same thing. Maybe it is right. And we're like, oh, geez. But, we all get that from our kids or our husband or our wife, whatever like that. But it's really just kind of polishing it and saying the right way or emphasizing the points a little bit more eloquently that says, yeah, this is important to us. And we're not going to vary from that.
Yeah.
It's very important to us.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, once we get done with this project and we have that polished value statement, then the work begins on internalizing that on an individual basis, teams, et cetera. And so how do we amplify that and weave that into the fabric of the organization so that people feel a personal affinity towards it? People feel personal accountability and responsibility, I dare say, to uphold it. So with that, I'm going to segue into number 2, which I think is a nice takeoff of number 1. So the second most commonly used term was responsive, right? And no big surprise there based on the mission statement. To me, what that says, especially from a culture perspective, is that people have the opportunity to lend their voices and they are heard, and that there's action that comes as a result of those voices being amplified and heard. And as a culture architect, as I like to refer to myself, I think that that's something that's critically important, right? Is not just saying things for the sake of, appeasing the itching ear or making statements that sound really good and are only performative in nature, right? They're only as good as the air they're taking up in a room or their statements on a page. But to be responsive means that something has been identified and that there is action that is thoughtful, intentional, and if possible, swift, that then supports and responds to whatever the issue or concern or even the positive for that matter, right? When we think about recognition, right, and somebody does a great job, part of being responsive is recognizing individuals' hard work, efforts made, even when, people talk to me sometimes about winning and failure, and I have a philosophy on that, is that you either win or you learn and you grow. The only failure is in not learning and growing, essentially, right? And so when we think about being able to celebrate even when people have worked really hard and maybe a deal doesn't come to fruition or there's a hiccup on project and, you've gone over budget or over deadline or whatever, is that people can come around and still feel a sense of accomplishment and pride, despite, slightly or somewhat missing a mark. And I think that that's something to be proud of as a culture, because Lord knows I have been in some cultures, especially in corporate, where you get flambéed the minute that, you don't meet a deadline or a deliverable, even if the best, I don't want to say excuses, but there's a solid rationale for why. But that's not the case here.
No, it's not. I don't know exactly how where this comes from, I guess, but we have lots of metrics that we track, and we're always evaluating performance and whatever, because, and I think sometimes it's very easy to get focused on those metrics because that's the way that we measure things. And I don't really know that there's another way to measure things that makes any sense from a business operations perspective. But I think sometimes people get lost in the idea that the metrics are the only thing that matters. The metrics are benchmarks, and they're guides. They're things to shoot for here. People miss metrics all the time. We have some project managers that get so bent out of shape about missing a metric, which on the one hand, in the leadership, we appreciate that. You're aware that you missed a metric. That's a good thing, right? But really what we're looking for is for people to fight for it. Like that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're having a tough time on a piece of business or a deadline or something, but you're fighting for it, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
Personally.
That's great. And so in my world, that's the quantitative versus qualitative approach, right? And while both are important, and it sounds to me like that's important here as well, right? So it's not just about the metric and what we can quantify and wins versus losses, but we can also take time to regard the quantitative, right? People who are going after it and putting effort forth, and the intentionality is there, and they're communicating well, right? Both externally with perhaps maybe a prospect or a client, and then internally through leadership, so that there's that proper checks and balances. So that's great. Let's go into the third commonly used term, and that's fun. So,
shocker.
Well, you already talked about dancing, so I was thinking 312, the dancing. I mean,
oh my goodness.
I get it. I haven't been invited yet.
You're
just
always
for the
invited.
record,
Everybody's
right? Like, okay, so
HRP adjacent people are always invited.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to have to make it a point to see it for myself and witness the fun of HRP. But let's talk about that just real quick. What do you think that's about in terms of the fun? Are we talking like shooting Nerf guns in the hallway, or what's the definition of fun here at HRP?
Yes.
I was going to say yes, yes, and yes. I think there's highs and lows. I mean, there's events like the annual sausage party, which was kind of coincides with spring and the basketball tournament and people's failed woes of the internal football pool, where the losers have to do all the cooking. So you get people from all sides. But the fun can even be just cracking jokes.
Yeah.
And having personal relationships where you just have fun with people for certain events. I mean, some of it's morphed into what each office has put into their 312 thought as what they culturally do. But it could be a planned event, but a lot of times it could be just a random game night. It could be a random hey, Yvonne, it's been a tough day. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Hey, it's apple season. You want to go run over to the orchard and grab some apples? Yeah. Okay. We'll do that instead of going to like a regular lunch. I mean, that stuff is like fun.
Yes.
So it's really anything is to me is open game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of different ways to create a fun environment within an organization. And you've noted, it could be large events, but it's really in the everyday. It's in the exchanges, right? And the engagement that organizations have within teams, across teams, that really makes for a fun environment. So that's great. So let's move on to number 4, which is family and teamwork. Was the fourth most commonly used term to describe HRP's values. I think about where we've been in the last 2 years with the pandemic, right? And I think it's pretty safe to say across the board for a lot of folks that the deepened connections with family due to perhaps our ability to work from home and be with our loved ones a little bit more has been amplified. And I even dare say prioritize. I know that Tom and Alicia and we did a podcast previously about the Great Resignation, and part of that, I talked about the dynamic of people having time to kind of sit with themselves and their loved ones and sort of reprioritize their life. And so when I see this on here as one of the top 5s, it warms my heart because it says to me a couple things. That one, that there is a family-like culture here in a positive way, and then also that employees' individual families are prioritized, right? From leadership, right? The fact that if one does have family, whatever that family construct looks like, it could be, the standard or and what we historically have known has been socialized as a standard, right? And it could just be an individual and their pets, right? There's different framing around what a family structure is. And so with that, speak to that facet, right? About the internal family and then the support of employee families.
Yeah. So this is sort of a weird one in a way, because the idea that, your actual family versus your work family sort of comes into this. Like, there's a lot of things going on here in this for me. Mm-hmm. So I kind of see family / teamwork, sort of same idea in a way. I kind of see that like as the glue that kind of binds all these ideas together. And yes, people's families obviously are important to us. That's why you come to work, to earn a living and, pay for things like college or whatever. So, that's kind of the point. We sort of take the position that you shouldn't be miserable while you're doing that. So, let's make it a fun environment. So there's that.
Agreed.
Right? But one of the sort of looking back over the last several years where people have really been prioritizing, the home side for all of the obvious reasons, and we don't need to go into any of that because everybody understands that, right? It's interesting from like a cultural perspective at the company where you think of the people that you work with as family. I don't think that that's particularly normal. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's the glue, because what you have to recognize, if you believe that, and I think that most people who exist here over a long period of time do at some level, right? It works against flexibility in a way. And let me tell you why I say that, right? This isn't all about, if you're part of a family, it's not all about you, right?
Right?
It's not always all about you, right? So the organization has to try to provide opportunities for people to do the things that they need to do at home and be supportive of that and provide what most people would traditionally define as flexibility. I need to come in late. I need to leave early. I need to, all of those kinds of things. And we do all of that, right?
Right.
But we still have a job to do. We have to execute, right? And so the flexibility at this company, I believe, comes as a consequence of the fact that people think that this place is a family, right? Because when you need something, when you're down, when you've got your dad who's freaking out because he just had surgery and can't manage his medicine like I had to deal with this morning, right? I'm not here. Somebody has to pick up the slack. That's what families do, right?
Right.
You give, you get, you leave a little on the table. You don't take more than is your portion. Maybe sometimes you give a little bit of your portion to somebody else because they need it, kind of thing. That's what family is all about. That's what you do for your family, right? So if you really think of HRP as a family, what it means is that we have to support each other's flexibility internally and externally. And so to be a really functional part of this organization, you have to be willing to give more than you get sometimes. I'm not saying always,
right,
but you have to be willing to do that. Not on behalf of HRP or on behalf of Dan and Tad, but on behalf of the person that's sitting in the next cubicle over who maybe is having a difficult day and just can't get that thing done. So go do it for them, right? And then expect that you'll get it back.
So here's a word that I'm hearing, I guess, in my head and my heart, and maybe, Tad, you can speak to this, is care, right? Is that the folks of HRP care about the work, care about one another, and want to extend care to one another. as the COO, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's absolutely true. And then I can't remember if we talked about this before the podcast started or not, but you had mentioned whether people are saying things just for you raised the great phrase, the ears want to hear it, or whatever phrase you use. I love that one. But a lot of our feelings, care, relationship, the family, the teamwork, the responsiveness, all this stuff is real. So real and caring actually means something to me. If we're asking and sometimes we get that because of who we are as strange technical people. Sometimes we want the facts right away and not a lot of small talk. So maybe it's a little bit inherent for us. But there is general care about folks' family when someone is sick. Recently it could be COVID. Hey, you do this. Thanks for protecting us. We'll take care of you. But, there's been serious sicknesses. There's been death. There's been hardships on projects. There's been people who needed some time off with mental health breaks and things like this.
Yeah.
Where there is a sense of care because time and time again, people have showed that they will back each other up. Yeah. And it is genuine because if people didn't back each other up, you wouldn't come forward, you wouldn't ask. People are more open to ask at any opportunity now. Mm-hmm. And even some folks where you think in the past they might not have specced up or they might have been, more introverted than extroverted, they'll come and ask, and they're, overwhelmed by yes, we will help you out there, or have you ever thought or considered this? And it's I didn't know that was possible, or I worked at a different place. And it's hey, it's always a conversational piece. But no, care is, it might seem like a simple word, but it's a pretty deep word. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's either, is it real, or is I'm putting on a show and, trying to do the junior league care? There's real care.
It's been interesting, just to jump in here, because this is a cross that I carry, but it's been interesting through the pandemic as to these few ideas here that are coming out. And I'm very excited that they're coming out, and I just hope people can actually sort of double down on some of this right now, right, as we're emerging from the pandemic and we're getting back to normal. So Tad and I both are very proud of the fact that we didn't lay anybody off in the pandemic. And I've said this 1,000 times, I think, in front of the company. I'm not sure it always lands, so I'm going to say it again. I don't know any other consulting engineering firm that didn't lay people off. I don't know of one.
Wow.
I'm not saying there aren't any, because obviously I don't know everything, but for all the ones that I have contact with, they all had layoffs. And when we, stepped off the cliff into the pandemic like everybody else did, Tad and I had a conversation at the beginning, and we doubled down that we just couldn't, from an ethical perspective, for the purpose of sort of to manage cash flow or profitability, put people on the street where, there were families and whatnot that, dependent upon healthcare coverage and, a paycheck and all that sort of stuff. And it was scary enough going into the pandemic in the first place that people, HRP staff, did not need that additional stress. So we were going to figure out a way to make it work. And so we did. What I think people need to step back and recognize is that we all paid for that. There's a cost associated with that.
Yeah.
It's a cost. We were underperforming, we were underutilized, we were overstaffed, all of those things, because that was just what happened, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It wasn't the company's fault. It wasn't the leadership's fault. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Whoa, shocker, right? So everybody, whether they realize it or not, took a little bit out of their back pocket and paid for the care that everybody else was getting. Right?
Keep all the boats afloat, so to speak. Yeah.
This organization is its people. It's not there's HRP and then there's the people of HRP. They are the same. They're inseparable, and they are the same. Right. So we all paid for that. And that's okay. But now, as we're emerging from this, I've heard, in a few corners here and there, like we didn't have bonuses last year. People are like, well, when are we going to get back to bonuses? Well, listen, that's part of having paid for this, right? And so that's not great from a personal income perspective. And, some other engineering company that laid off 20% of their workforce and, put that cash in a bank account now is dangling, big money in front of you. I don't know. Maybe you just want to pause and think about that for a second. Yeah. And, make the decision that you're going to make. But we will bounce back because we have the fortitude that those other organizations don't, and we will rise above those other organizations as a consequence of that fortitude. But we had to take a breath for a minute. We had to take a knee in order to keep everybody employed into the, in the context of employment, safe and healthy and, insured and providing for their families and all that sort of stuff. And so I take that very personally, and I wish that lots of people could see that on the way out here and could just hang in for a little while, because we will get back to where we want it to be, where we need to be. But the reason that we're not there is because of the caring aspect that we're talking about here, because we all paid a little bit to keep everybody on board.
It's interesting that you say that. At one point in my career, I worked for a big law firm in New York City in the financial district. And after 9/11, our firm had taken a huge financial hit. I mean, millions of dollars. We had some structural damage to our building, but moreover, because of the markets, we took a huge financial hit. And I remember the senior partners of the firm kind of coming together and basically saying, we can pay bonuses, or we can, make sure everybody keeps their jobs. And we would rather do the latter, but we're going to let the people decide. And so they put out a poll to the entire workforce. And that's where we really got a chance to see what you're talking about, which was the family aspect, that people were like, listen, with everything that's going on, I would rather have a little less in my pocket and still see the same faces when we're able to go back to the office, see the same faces, enjoy the same camaraderie, the same teamwork, the same support that I always have. And that has more value to me than just the mere economics of what's in my bank account. And so I applaud HRP for making the better choice of saying, we're going to support our people, we're going to help sustain them during this time of turbulence and uncertainty and everything that was going on. And you hit on a great point, Dan, which is the healthcare aspect, right? I mean, dealing with the potential of getting COVID and the extensive illness that goes along with that, and to think about that from not having a healthcare perspective is, to me at least, unfathomable. And so the fact that you had that forethought of how do we protect our people, how do we care for our people, and as you said, it's a little bit of everybody sharing in that as a collective. And now everyone rises back together and goes hard and gets, things done and gets the business back to where it wants to be, the right level of profitability and success, et cetera. But I agree with you. I hope that resonates with folks, because I think that's an important factor. And people may not always say it outright. And at the end of the day, I mean, any workplace, there's always going to be complaints. There's always going to be challenges, et cetera. But I just want to say that as somebody who is very entrenched and inspired by the culture that's being built here at HRP, I think that right there is a moment in time that I hope is not easily forgotten.
Well, I will say, Tad and I both have taken a lot of body shots in the last 18 months over finances. And I know we've never really talked about this, but I think I can say pretty clear-eyed that if we had to rewind and do it all over again, we would do the same thing. As much as some of it was painful along the way. Yeah. We would do the same thing. And I appreciate you telling the story about the law firm and putting it out to a poll. I don't think we would have done that. No disrespect to that law firm. I mean, that's great that they did that. Well, but it's also making everybody else make the hard decisions. Yeah. And I think Tad and I both come from a place where you lead from the front and you take the hard decisions and you take responsibility for them.
Plus it was a different time. It was a pandemic, and a lot of people were getting information or misinformation. Yeah. Sure. It was very challenging. Really, the most important thing was, what am I going to do with my family or daycare or my parents? Yeah. They didn't need that extra big decision. Not that they couldn't have had input, but it was just another thing. Yeah. Yeah. And there was a lot more factors that maybe not everybody was privy to the information, and where we relished the fact to lead from the front and go down swinging because we knew we would come back up. We would get back off the canvas. That's the old saying, right?
Yeah.
You get knocked down in the prize fight, you got to get up off the canvas. So our backgrounds kind of helped us with that.
I mean, I could talk to the both of you all day long because I love this. But let's get on to number 5, client focus.
Yay.
So client focus was the 5th most commonly used term to describe HRP's values. I think that's probably pretty standard for most organizations. But talk to me specifically about HRP's client-focused approach throughout the organization and why that is something that is so highly valued here.
Well, I touched on that, I think, in the preamble. I mean, HRP is its employees, and its employees serve its clients. It's a symbiotic relationship, and this is one of those things why I thought it was important to stop using the word culture and start using the word 312. This idea of client focus is on every professional service provider's website. Like everybody says that, so it becomes this sort of nebulous kind of bleh, you know what I mean? Okay, well, being client focused for us means literally putting your client first. And so one of the things that we do around here, for example, which I think most engineering firms would lose their minds over, we have a cell phone policy. When we're in meetings like this kind of a meeting, right? You answer the phone. You don't not answer the phone. You don't put it on mute. You don't look at it because you're in your OSHA refresher training and say, oh, gee, client Snuffy's calling. I'll call him back because I'm in training. Nope. The client comes first. So you answer the phone, and everybody here at HRP needs to be okay with that. Internal meetings are always less important than the things that we do for our clients, and answering the phone is the easiest thing that you can do. Even if they're just calling, even if you just answer the phone and say, hey, I'm in the middle of a meeting, can I call you back? It's a human touch that's not voicemail that allows that client to put a check in a box and say, okay, I got a hold of, project manager so-and-so, and they're going to call me back so I can move on to the next thing. And I just don't know anywhere else that does that kind of stuff. They talk about being client focused, but then they're not flexible on their billings. They don't give anything. We get so many clients from consultants who just, made a mistake and then, in fixing the mistake, billed their client for fixing the mistake that they made in the first place. Like all that. Oh God, it happens all the time. Right. Like that kind of nonsense. And we don't do that. So when we say that we're client focused, that's what I mean. And, what in my response to being client focused. And, I think that the proof is in the pudding. This company is 40 years old this year, and we have clients that are as old as the company.
That's fantastic.
Quite a few of them.
Wow. Talk about longevity.
Yeah, that's not normal
right.
in this industry. And I think it speaks to being nimble and being responsive and being client focused year over year, billing cycle over billing cycle, era over era, regulatory problem over regulatory problem, management over management, leadership over leadership. That they're still with us says a lot about what client focus is really all about.
Yeah, that's great.
Could give you a live example on that, actually. No. Well, one thing I would say about client focused is it is internal and external, but that word care comes into it. We care about the client. We're a consultant. We talk to this about, especially with the younger folks coming in. The reason why we're hired is someone has a problem. It is the biggest problem on their mind at their time. It's the one that's just driving them nuts, keeping them up. So it really needs to be our major focus to ease that pain. Okay, we do that with our deliverables with folks, but at the same time, internal, our CMS, our corporate marketing services, they're focused on assisting each regional office and getting done. Talk about a group that cares. They have no weekends. They have 7 days. There's no weekends and nights. They just make the packages the best. The hours are extensive, and we have other departments that do that too as well, with accounting and HR, things like that, where we're servicing internal and things. Not touting anything, but I'm just going to back up what Dan said. Was I did just look at my cell phone, and there was a 40-year client on there who we're working on a master services agreement with, and I asked them for higher rates, and they said, well, we'd really want to keep it the same for 2022. Are you guys okay with that? Can you go? And the answer was, sure, we can do that. Let's go. All works.
Wow.
So it was simple, nimble, flexible, responsive, and I just kind of wanted to give you an example. I'm not touting it at all, and it was client focused, but we're also at a relationship, sometimes with a family and teamwork aspect of with our clients too. You know, when you say family and teamwork, yes, it's people within this room,
right?
But it's also you get that with your clients, the associations you belong to, your vendors and subs and things of that nature, because you know, if I didn't buy into that client, I wouldn't have answered that email that way or that text that way. So client focus is really, we always, because we care, we always try to do the best for the next person and put them in a better place. Then we'll go back to our issues, our problems, and work in there too, is what it is. And that's the longevity of HRP. That's why it keeps people coming back. And this is an all region, all office, all geographic North America thing. I mean, you don't do that in 40 states and 24 countries if you don't do this stuff, being client focused.
Right.
It just happens. People are like, what?
Yeah.
You only have this many people. And it's like, well, they like us. They drag us all over, and we like to go there. And it's a hand-in-hand thing. We understand each other, and then the next day we get another assignment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's nice that you mentioned that about how it bleeds, so to speak, outside the walls, because I will be honest and say that I've always felt that way, you know, just as a partner to HRP, with how people have embraced Indelible Impressions, embraced me, that there have been, there's just a nice feel to it all. And I think hopefully I've demonstrated over our partnership that, you know, I care very deeply about HRP
100%.
and its employees, but there's reciprocity there. And I have very much appreciated that. And so, you know, all of these top 5 terms, I've actually been the beneficiary of, as well as a partner to the organization. So just want to say thank you on that.
Thank you.
And we know that you want to be more part of the fun here, so we're going to pay
I would like the fun meter to go up a little bit, guys. I'm just
practical
saying.
joke, well, you know,
exactly.
confetti or a water balloon, and we'll
I don't know
feed
about
you
the
well
confetti.
too.
Yeah, the feeding part I'm not mad at, not one bit. I want the sausage party for sure. All right, so I want to make sure that we're able to get through most of this. So we also, when we were doing the survey, had asked folks about some statements, and some of the most impactful ones around our culture and our values as they exist currently. So one of the positive statements came around people in the environment. Right? So no big surprises there. There were a couple of takeaways that some of them were quite heartwarming, I'll say. And I'm going to actually lead with that. The CEO knew my name when he visited my office. My office coworkers always have faith in my abilities to start new jobs in areas. They notice when I'm unable to come into the office on a certain day, and I feel welcome in this community. So the CEO knew my name.
Which is saying something, because I can't remember anybody's name ever.
So that's pretty amazing. So I will say that as someone who in my previous work life was an employee versus, you know, the head of a company, much like yourself, Dan, and Tad, that I understand how meaningful that is. And for this person to reflect on that the CEO knew my name, especially when we talk about culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, nothing feels more inclusive and that I belong than when top of the house knows my name, and not in a bad way. My negative reputation precedes me, and Dan comes in and goes, Yvonne,
we got to talk.
We got to talk, but more so from the perspective in the vein of this positive statement that you took the time to know who they were, and I dare say also probably engaged in some level of conversation with them. So we don't know who it was, but
No.
you made an indelible impression, clearly.
And I have to say, I'm kind of surprised at that because I'm really awful at that. I'm so bad with names.
Maybe you're not as bad as you think you are.
Tad over here is amazing at that. Tad is HRP's social butterfly. Like, he knows everybody's details, and
He's the mayor.
You know, their dogs' names. He's the mayor. Their dogs' names, and you know, when Fluffy the cat, you know, had to get their toenails clipped. Like, he knows all that stuff. And I'm like, what? Who?
Why do you know
How do you
all this?
Yeah. He amazes me with that all the time.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But it is in those small moments, right? And it just goes to show you that moments matter. And we don't always get this information, right? And this isn't always readily available and passed around. So it's good to capture things like this and to make it known. So I feel welcome in this community. All right. So this is like really big for me, right? Because to me, culture is always community. And so the fact that that's been established is important, right? And we know that there are dysfunctional cultures and communities,
Yep.
but this is on the positive. And while no culture or community is perfect, the fact that they said they feel welcome, and that also speaks to belonging.
Yeah.
Right. And because when you feel included and you feel like you truly belong, right? It's not I'm being tolerated, right? But I truly belong. There's something in the cultural ethos, right? And you used the term earlier that speaks to that I feel welcome.
Yeah.
And didn't say felt, like past tense. When I joined, I feel welcome, which indicates that it's ongoing.
Mm-hmm. And it's pretty powerful too, because I would say they feel welcome. At some point, in some instance, they didn't feel welcome in another situation.
Very likely.
Was it church? Was it social group? Was it their former job?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel welcome. So it's a very observant person who made that statement, and you can learn a lot from that.
Yeah, and
whoever that is.
Yeah, and essentially what they're highlighting is that was important to them, right? So what does that say about the importance of feeling included and belonging?
Well, I actually think like this is another one of those things that kind of cuts both ways, right? So that's wonderful for the people who are a part of it. And maybe this is the next thing that we need to work on with indelible impressions. But I think one of the hazards here is that when you come into an organization like this that's so tightly bound to itself and everybody knows each other, and we've got people coming from, you know, we have a very active alumni association. We have people that work at other consulting companies that show up at our parties. Right?
I love it.
Which is fine.
Because you're fun, number 3.
And everybody, once you've worked here, most everybody leaves something behind here.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's great. But as we grow and we evolve, one of the, I think of your DE&I training with the little fuzzy ball guy.
Oh, from Pixar. Yeah. Pearl.
He loves it.
Pearl.
Pearl.
He brings it up a lot.
Love me some
Do
Pearl.
you?
Right? But it is
Pearl is his jam.
It is a fair thing to say that in an organization where people know each other and are so comfortable with each other that it's hard to be a new guy.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be a new guy or girl or whatever. Person. New person.
Okay.
Yes. I'm working on it. New person. And it's not intentional at all, right? Because you hear in the rest of this, like that's not really what this place is, right? But if we had, from an onboarding process, right? Like if we had some, I don't know what this looks like, but if we had some checks and balances or responsible parties or something to sort of bridge the gap between new and, you know, sitting at the table kind of thing, probably would go a long way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think Deb and I have talked about some things around that. I
think for the most part, it happens organically. But if you have, and this
onboarding
is true,
ambassadors.
If you have, this is true with technical people, some technical people, and the three of us who are HRPers here, the list is running through our minds right now, who are introverted and not particularly outgoing, right, can get stuck in that pearl trap without anybody even recognizing that it's happening because they're just sort of floating around chit-chatting with everybody and you don't even realize that it's happening.
Right.
And somehow the organization would be better off for itself if we could figure out on a more regimented and regular basis to be able to get into the middle of that and stop it from happening.
Yeah.
Well, here's with a big softball thrown to me, which you didn't really know, but I just had a conversation with an employee about some ways that we can kind of work on that. It has to do with some mentoring and some relationship building and things like that they did at the other job that they held, with some of those ideas in mind, exactly kind of what Dan was going for. But on a personal level, with my daughter being the same way, being a person who is more of an introvert and having a tough time in college to make friends. Smart student, driven, maybe a little social awkward, maybe a little bit personal anxiety, and you wonder about, we're telling her, hey, there's others out you that are like that, but they're having a tough time like you to come forward because it's not in what you're going through to come forward and have that ambassador.
It's not innate.
It's to do all that, and that's what's neat about Indelible Impressions. Some of the things that you brought to us too. It's great for the internal side of our company. It's great for the external side of our company, just like I like to do with psychogeometrics and how you do communications. Okay, we're teaching you at work about something. Maybe the benefit here is just how you get better along with your family.
Absolutely.
There's a success. Let's really make that happen. So, that's something that we really need to focus on a little bit more, because times have changed and it deserves and needs more focus to do that.
Yeah. And I dare say that, especially when we start looking at millennials and other generations right on their heels, is that this is what they're looking for, right? This is what they want in culture and environment and all of that. So the more, I dare say, flexible and nimble we can be with figuring out how to close that gap, I think the better everyone will be. And it provides a great opportunity for people to get to know each other better and build rapport and all of that. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Tad, about kind of that principle of indelible impressions of, taking what you learn everywhere your foot shall tread, because I think that it's really important. And a lot of the skills that we try to improve and grow and learn, I think are applicable across many environments of life. And that's how it should be. And that's what makes it legit, I dare say, and becomes innate within each of us. Because otherwise, if you're just doing it at work, well, that's performative by nature, right? That's faking the funk. And we want to make sure that everybody can be their true, authentic selves and take all these parts of themselves and utilize them across their entire lifespan. So, all right. One other thing that I want to bring up, besides all of the great kudos that are here around positive statements for people in the environment, is freedom, challenge, versatility, and balance. So I thought that this was really interesting, that people are jazzed about the variety of different projects that they get to work on and development opportunities. And someone noted the freedom to work how and where you want without overbearing administrative restrictions, right? And so I like the fact that someone has noted, I love the flexibility, I love the versatility and all that, but I also love the challenge. And so for people who are looking to just grow in their daily lives, grow in whether it's their business acumen or it's to get better on the job for their specific role, clearly there's an environment here that allows for that and promotes that. Does anybody want to touch on that a little bit?
I'll let Dan expand on this, but one of my things I say to people, if I see their confidence waving or if they need a little boost, I said, take a shot at the title. It's a free. You want a shot at the title? Go for it. No. We have enough quality control and support that if you fall, we will catch you. There's the net. We got the circus net. So But really, you're in this business and where we've had our career. And Dan and I can say this because we've had the opportunities to go for it and take a shot at the title. And that's kind of what protected our careers. And we like to push it on to others.
Yeah.
So, you people have the freedom to go as far as they want. But it's also got to be self-driven, too.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. You can have a shot at the title, but it's got to be self-driven.
Yeah.
Which sometimes can be difficult. Dan, do you want to?
No, I think you're exactly right. And I, again, this is sort of funny how these things talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking about what our mission statement is and what we're trying to deliver our clients. Diverse array of clients in an ever-changing environment, being flexible and responsive and nimble. Again, your internal as your external. I don't know how you could be all of those things and then be stuck in a box at work that you're never allowed to leave. So, I think it's just a manifestation of what this place really is. I think that the opportunities and the ability to be your authentic self and, just kind of figure out what you want to do, that's what this place is all about. Mm-hmm. And, Tad and I are both manifestations of that. I mean, I can't remember a time ever at HRP. I mean, there's always, there's work to do and there's the jobs that you don't want to do. And, that's why it's called work. But, at the end of the day, there's also lots of opportunity to go chase around stuff that you're interested in. And I've spent an entire career doing that here. In fact, I will say out loud, sitting across from Mr. Simmons, who has not said much recently, we are sitting in this sound studio, which is a manifestation of this very idea, I think, right? So Tom came to us. He's not a technical person per se. And when we got going in all our digital media spaces and our podcast and our YouTube channel, Tom had an opportunity to sort of take it on, and I'm looking at all the equipment that we have. This looks incredible. Like a professional sound studio space at this point.
Yeah.
This is something. Yeah, this is something that has grown out of Tom, and he's had almost unfettered ability to chase after all of this in whatever way that he
we don't
sees
fully
fit.
give him the credit card. We
every once in a while I always say, no, Tom, you can't have that $10 million stage light, but
and in Tom's
how about
defense,
the $5
he's a
million
media techie. He may not be an engineer or geotechie, but he's kind of a media, film, digital techie.
Yeah. Anybody who's listening to this who doesn't understand this yet, if you just forget about me and Tad or anybody else, if you just look at what Tom has built here, you have to be able to derive that you can do the same thing if there's something that you're interested in. You just need to speak up, and we'll talk about it and figure it out. Listen, if you want to make HRP into an accounting firm, okay, that's probably not going to work because that's not what we do. But as long as it's sort of in our space or adjacent to our space, if there's an itch that you want to scratch, you can do that here.
Yeah.
One thing that Dan said, I want to expand on is, I mean, I just had a conversation right before lunch, and it was with the employees saying, look, don't forget, go wherever you want to go, but you got to do the bads and the goods. Push yourself, because, Dan and I are pursuing things, but we still have to have that ugly talk about AR and someone who's not listening to our managers, doesn't want to pay the bill. I really didn't want to get up this morning and have that conversation, but it's part of the burden.
Yeah.
Someone's got to vacuum the stairs.
Right.
There's a parent that does the Legos,
stairs?
And there's a parent
damn stairs
that's got to pick up the poo. And then you hopefully will switch and do all that.
Right.
But it is that thing, and by doing that, it grows the company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's amazing. So to that point, I would love to capture your voice on this, Tom, in the spirit of equity in the room.
Yeah.
What has that been like for you, right? Like kind of having a bit of an open lane to be able to challenge the environment to say, this is where I see us going. This is what we need to go there. What's that been like for you?
It's been wholly supportive. I've really been granted a great deal of extraordinary deal of trust and deferment to kind of the expertise that I've taken the time to really develop and had the ability to get the time to develop thanks to what I've been offered here at HRP.
Yeah, that's huge, because that's the other thing, right? That I feel like a lot of organizations don't understand. It's always like, okay, professional development. And then employees go, when?
Yeah.
When do I get the opportunity to develop? Well, that's kind of on your own time.
Yeah.
Like, your goal is your job. And I always challenge environments like that and say, if professional development is going to help this organization, then that falls within the window of the 9 to 5 or whatever time frame there is. This is not secondary, unless you want just people going in as robots and just doing the same thing over and over again, and you keep yielding the same results, right? You have to allot time for professional development, and that's what I hear. And then in addition to that, it creates room for innovation. I think, for the professional development, also giving feedback, I think, is incredibly important. And it's almost a perfect segue, ironically, as I'm looking down at the results. Because, for as much as we have all of everything that HRP does wonderfully, right? We always have opportunities for growth in various areas. And let me say, that is the way for every organization. There's no organization that I've either worked for or that I now serve in some capacity that has it all figured out and is getting 10s across the board. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. And if you are scoring 10s across the board, you're lying, or you've got a bunch of machines, because that's just not human nature. So with that, talking about just the ability to be more, the ability to recognize folks more. That is one point of feedback that was given in the survey, is name recognition, which in turn leads to more opportunities, right? And so the person said, with more work coming in, it'd be nice to have more staff to support efforts, staff organization, diversified career growth opportunities, etc. But they led with the recognition part that turns into opportunities. And so what is it in this moment that you glean from that and can be used as an action item, a takeaway from this, in terms of how HRP goes about recognizing its folks?
Well, again, the cloak of the pandemic has made all of that much more difficult. And I said sort of at the beginning that this organization, I think, has suffered disproportionately in that regard, because we're not together. And so it's hard for people to be able to recognize what other people are doing when they don't ever see those other people, and they're all distant from each other. Yeah. So this is something that, I think we're very aware of. We have had in the past lots of different award and reward systems, and we had, the HRP mission statement quarterly award before the pandemic, which I think we're going to get back to, which is sort of like a cash call out to, super performers. That's not that many people, obviously, because it's really the people who did something extra special. But yeah, I mean, we and Tad's very good at this, constantly trying to call people out in public meetings for the good stuff that they've done. I think we just need to keep doing that, and need to keep trying to come up with ways to sort of call that out. To be honest with you, I think we do a good job of that. I think probably where we have some shortcomings is in translation from staff through management to awareness. Okay. I imagine that there are probably a lot of HRP staff people who are, to use a phrase, suffering in silence because their manager is not recognizing the great job that they're doing, and so therefore the manager's manager doesn't know anything about it, and then we certainly don't know anything about it if they don't know anything about it. So some of it, I think, is just constantly working with the management staff to try to get them that, like, this is tying pieces together here. People listening to the podcast, if you tie some of the stuff that Tad and I have been saying together over the last few years, when we talk about project managers in particular, or talking about how we want project managers to be better business people, to me, this kind of falls into that space. In a technical business, in this business over time, all we've ever really done to make managers is promote good technical people. So if you were really good at 2 times 2 is 4, then you became, a project manager because you made better 4s than, the guy sitting next to you. Okay. And this is a technical business. There's a role for that. But the technical part of it is the product.
Right.
And then there's the business, and they're very interrelated, but they're also separate and distinct. And running the business is not just about running the technical aspects of a project.
Correct.
And so, there's the client issues that we've already sort of covered. There's
relationship management,
both internal and external. So this would
Right.
be an internal relationship issue. So I think, part of what we need to do, and we do this, we just need to keep working with managers along the way to try to get them to be more aware of what's in front of them. And I don't mean that as a criticism to our project managers. We have great project managers. It's just thinking a little bit differently about what your role is, as opposed to just, being a technical, gutted out project manager.
And we do it. We all do it here in the room where you work hard during the day, you go home and you're tired. But I think we need to take a little advice from the family dog. Always happy to see you when you get home. So the dog's happy. Did we do something? Can we end the day? Did we acknowledge somebody that maybe, hey, you're home, or you did something? The different message that we have now is a lot of people like to hear a recognition in different ways.
Yeah.
It's not always Monday. It could be a simple thank you.
Yes.
It could be going out to lunch. It could be a T-shirt or a hat. We just got to figure out what those ways are.
Yeah.
And folks need to realize that there's a different way, even for you 3 of you in the room. I could have a conversation. It's always going to be different for me to reach each one of you, and you got to understand that. And Dan's right. We got to keep on working at it, and making sure that that it does happen, because it does make you come back to work or the next week, or wanting to fight and doing those things we already talked about, which makes the company good.
Yeah.
If you don't have recognition, then those 5 things go away. But there's different ways of doing it, and sometimes we end up being a little bit too tired or worn down or a little bit robotic, and we tend to do it in the same way. I could say, good job, Yvonne, great job, hey, thanks again. You're like, that's great, but you didn't give me a bonus or hire me for the next job. But right. I said thank you 14 times to you. And I am recognizing you, but it's like that was not the read of the relationship.
Yeah.
So
that's
something to concentrate on.
Yeah.
That's like a really good point. I mean,
know thy audience.
Yeah, I'm like sort of like people chastise us Northeasterners because when we're walking down the street, we don't say hello to everybody, which is annoying. Just saying. So they're like, "Oh, Northeasterners are so unfriendly." Not really. Like when you find somebody broken down on the side of the road that needs their tire changed, you'll probably find that in the Northeast, not so much in the South. Just saying, where everybody says hello to each other.
Well, but it's like 105 degrees. We don't want to go outside.
Right. But thank you is, I don't know. It's performative sometimes.
Do you think?
Right. I think so.
Well, I think it's.
I'm not saying you shouldn't say thank you. It's polite, but I don't think that recognition in the context of what we're trying to do is about thank you. It's okay to do that, and we should do that. I'm not saying otherwise, right? But to me, I think that really the best way to recognize people is to give them opportunity. Like that's it, right? Like just sort of keying off some of the stuff that Tom was saying, and we're telling him all the time he's doing a great job and whatever. But I don't know, I'm going to put words in your mouth, but really the best thing that HRP as an organization has done, right, is kind of get out of your way and let you do what you want to do.
For those of you not in the room, Tom's over here nodding.
Right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
the independence is key.
The autonomy.
For sure.
Yeah. And the trust. It sounds like even more so, right? Yeah. Like that you trust him to do well and so he trusts you to get out of the way and let him do his thing.
So we have to figure out ways to make that more readily obvious to other people, because this is complicated, right?
Well,
because
somewhat.
Well, it's not from 100,000 feet. It's not complicated, but but the implementation of it is complicated.
Execution wise, it can be. So I will just say, from a culture perspective, here's what I'm thinking.
Sure.
is when I made the statement a few moments ago about know thy audience.
Yeah.
It is imperative that managers know their team members, not just know the team and what they do and the work product, but know them, know who they are, know what makes them tick. And I think you were starting to tread down this path a little bit there, Tad, where recognition looks different for everyone.
Sure.
What they're looking for in the recognition is different. You
Sure.
mentioned about the thank you. I think for me, I appreciate authentic thank yous versus performative, which is, I think, what you were trying to say as just the flip, oh, thank you for doing that kind of thing. Yeah, that doesn't really mean anything. But if you come to me and say, can give me details about what I did and the value that added or the success that was born out of that, and you give me an authentic thank you, that is extremely meaningful to me. And so I think it's a matter of managers knowing your team members, knowing what makes them tick, knowing what's important to them, know more about their communication style. And just for all of the listeners, this is not considered soft skills. These are essential skills that leaders need to have to build that relationship, to know how to calibrate with that individual person, know what makes them tick, what drives them, and delivering on that.
Yeah.
And those are what you will find will be the loyalists. Those will be the ones that will lead or go with you through the fire, will go with you through a pandemic and stay regardless of the bonus, whether it's there or not, because they feel inherently valued and appreciated.
Yeah.
Some people want the confetti and the award, right? They like that type of recognition, but there are some folks that appreciate delivery of recognition in different ways. So I feel like if you can tap into that in the middle management sector in particularly, you will find that you're able to turn that ship in a different direction.
Yeah, I didn't mean to poo-poo thank you. I appreciate what you're saying. I do. I just, when I think of somebody saying thank you, I think of like the rote, sort of customer service person at the cable company. It says, oh, thank you for your call. They don't care. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the best ways that you can show a broad cross section of people that you value them and appreciate them is to be interested in what they're interested in. Mm-hmm. Right? Just to sort of use a phrase, like we're interested in YouTube. Tom's interested in YouTube. There's alignment of purpose there. And the organization doesn't dictate that purpose. And I think this is another thing that people don't understand about this kind of a business, and in particular, the way that we do it. The fact of the matter is that more often than not, we are working ourselves out of a job constantly. Mm-hmm. This is not...
By innovating,
Well, we have to innovate. Yeah. A lot of people don't, right? But we have to innovate because, like site cleanups, which is where I come from, once the site's cleaned up, it's kind of done. Yeah. There's not another one right behind it, or there is, but maybe not for the same entity or for the same client. And the fact of the matter is that, environmental regulations evolve. We're not making many dirty sites anymore, and the ones that are getting cleaned up. So we're sort of always working ourselves out of a job. We're 40 years old this year. It's true that what we do today is not what we were doing 40 years ago.
Right.
That's in the data for all the technical people, right? And so just, history's, best teacher here. We have to continue to evolve to the next thing. And in my mind, the best way to do that is not for Tad and Dan to sit in a room with our smoking jackets on and token on our pipes saying, what are we going to do next? Because we're old. We don't know, right?
I'm just impressed with the fact that you both might have smoking jackets. And I want to know
I was keying off the Nerds movie.
Okay. And do you have ascots?
Yes, and leather fuzzy slippers.
Who has a smoking jacket, it's got to be Sean Malin.
I think that's probably, I bet you he probably does. 100%.
I could totally see that. And so, Sean Malin, if you're listening, we definitely want to see you in a red velvet smoking jacket with an ascot and a pipe. And fuzzy slippers would be awesome.
Just like the Nerds.
Just putting it out
movie.
there. Yeah.
Nerds. But in order to really make that happen, I think that, the way forward for an organization like this is to empower its people to do all of the things that are represented here in this survey, be creative, be flexible, feel empowered, feel engaged, all those sorts of things, and kind of do some of the things that you want to do, experiment a little bit, which is why sometimes the metrics aren't as important. We say this all the time. It's like a baseball season. Nobody wins all the games. You're going to lose some. That's the way it is. We just want to win more than we lose. That's what we're shooting for. And, let people sort of develop in those spaces, because that's where the next big thing is going to come from.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not inconceivable that this company could turn into a media production company that just does engineering content news for, the 5 people out there that want to look at it. And we're not an engineering company anymore. We're a media company, right?
Right.
Isn't that what like all the chefs did? They stopped cooking and they just started cooking on TV, and now they're
Pretty
sort of the same
much.
thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm so glad that we got the opportunity to share these results in real time. I do want to know if it's okay to just pivot to next steps, right?
Yeah.
What are we doing with this data?
Okay. So now that we have gotten all this information, there's going to be a employee panel impaneled.
Not impaled.
Impaneled. An employee panel impaneled. That is going to start working on developing the mission statement. Yeah. There's not going to be much in the way of leadership in the room. It's going to be an employee developed statement.
Correct.
So an invitation will be going out shortly to people who want to volunteer and participate.
Yep.
Yes. That's where we're going next.
Yeah.
It's a wild ride. I don't know what's going to happen.
So I believe that Alicia and I are going to engage with some folks and just work with them with what has been provided to us by the workforce, these 5 terms, and come around some options, and then see what nets out of that. And we will have a new value statement by the people for the people to be lived out internally, and we'll, I think, just by nature, extend outwardly in terms of client and partner engagement, subcontractors, etc. So I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to help lead this project. I think it's an important one. I hope that for all of the HRP employees, you felt valued, and that the leadership of this organization desires to keep you engaged and make sure that your voice is heard. And this is just one step among many that will be taken in the years to come to do exactly that.
Yes,
so
indeed.
We're excited, and I don't know how we're going to go about announcing the official value statement once it's
Well, I think we were shooting
done.
for trying to unveil it at the mid-year meeting.
Okay.
So the
Nice.
mid-quarter meeting.
No
which we don't have-
Zeppelin or anything like that, or
Well, we have
blimp?
drones.
Yes.
We have drones.
If there's any Zeppelin involved, I'm singing. I've got that part completely down.
Okay,
And I am
excellent.
good at that. Very good.
Nice.
Nice.
So to the extent that we're able to hold that timeline,
Yeah.
so it's basically 3 months away, we should
Yeah.
probably be able to get that done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, hands down. Awesome. All
Sweet.
right.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and thank you out there for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. What are we doing here?
So we are back again for the Play Hard section of 312. If you are listening to the podcast still, we just want to let you know that, as always, 312's Play Hard section is a video podcast. So you can keep listening, or you can go on to our YouTube channel and watch us there. Now, this is the values statement episode of the podcast. Now, the folks joining us here, Allyson and Brian,
Hello.
or Bubba, do not know the results of the survey yet. I do, because I got to be in the room, but I thought that these two would be a great addition to the podcast episode, because we want to talk about HRP values and what it means. And I think we've got 2 great representatives of that here. Someone who has just started their career at HRP, and someone who is a well-seasoned professional here, who has the experience and the knowledge and the wisdom that comes with
I don't know about
a
that.
storied career at HRP.
Well seasoned. I like that. I like well seasoned. And she's already off and running. She may be new, but she's already like stomping.
Thank you.
You're crushing it already.
I'm trying to learn as fast as I can, as much as I can. HRP's been very good about that. Helping me.
So, Allyson, can you give us a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Allyson Mendez. I am a recent graduate from Bryant University, where I did a double concentration in communication and marketing. I started here in November, and you've been pushing along and doing great ever since. At least that's what they tell me. And I'm really excited to be a part of the CMS team and really excited to work with HRP.
And I was lucky enough to actually be a part of the interview where we were considering Allyson. And I think we all knew right away that like you were going to be a perfect fit in here, and that we were really looking forward to.
I really liked
join
HRP.
us.
I loved when I was first interviewing for HRP. I really loved Alicia. She really sold me on HRP, the culture and everything. It just seemed very, very connected and very much something that I'd be able to fit right into.
And we were just coming off the heels of one of our best celebrations of the year, a proud, long-standing tradition, which there's currently a great video up on the HRP YouTube channel for the sausage party. And Bubba, since we've talked about it a little bit already, and you can see the full history of it in the video, can you very briefly give us a rundown of what that means?
Yeah, that's not a problem. So back in the 90s, one of our founders, John Hausman, played in a golf tournament, came in dead last, and they gave him kind of like the Joker prize. You know, it was just a couple rings of kielbasa. It was like the sucker prize. And John, you know, he didn't want it. He wasn't going to cook it all up at home, so he brought it into the office and he cut it all up with a bunch of peppers and onions and threw it on the grill and fed everybody in the company. And back then we were just a Connecticut company. So pretty much everybody in the company got to enjoy sausage and peppers that day. And we kind of like decided, actually HRP back then also had kind of like their own little golf league in-house. And so they kind of started doing the same thing. Like the guy that came in last would get sausage. It was called the sausage prize or whatever. We also started doing it with our pick'em pool, our football pick'em pool, where you pick, weekly you pick what teams you think are going to win. The guy that would come in last got the sausage prize, so he had to cook up the sausage and the peppers and the onions for the whole company, and we kind of made it coincide with the first Friday of the NCAA tournament because everybody was into the basketball tournament as well. So. Yeah, and it's kind of been a tradition for 30 years, somewhere around 30 years. And it's one of my favorites. I mean, even when the person that finishes last isn't around here to cook necessarily, I'll get on the grill and cook, but it's always a good time. So, yeah, it was really great to see this year's sausage party be a robustly attended function again. The last couple of years have been obviously rough for everyone, but it was a lot of fun. We had a blast. I hope you had a blast. I hope you had a blast.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was another good one. And the weather, oh my God, the weather this year was tremendous. It was like
so good.
70 degrees and sunny, and worked out really well. So
to get my shades.
Yeah. That the culture here is something that I have valued so much, and one of the biggest reasons why I took a job here was getting to enjoy that with people. And because of COVID, because of having to shut down the office, because of the turnover that happened at the same time of people trying out other things and going different places, we had lost that for a long time. And this party was really felt like a return to so much of what was so great about being here, and it was wonderful to be able to share that with new people and familiar faces as well.
Yeah, I agree. It was really exactly what you said, Tom. It like the last couple of years we kind of lost touch with each other.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were working from home so much that there wasn't a whole lot of all of us hanging around together, and but that was like last Friday was like the culmination of a lot of efforts to get everybody back in the house and have some fun together, and hopefully that's going to kick off, a continuation of the way it used to be with more, people attending like stuff like 312 and hanging out and getting to know your coworker on a not
personal
necessarily
level.
a personal level, exactly a personal level. So then that's always been like one of the biggest parts of this company, especially for me. I get to know everybody, and this is family. You get to like love the people you work with, and it's family. So, that was a blast. So,
yeah. Now it can be difficult depending on the kind of job you have here at HRP to be able to participate in that, since so much of it is like Friday based. So for a lot of us, you've put in a bunch of hours before you even get to Friday, and you're well into overtime. On 3 o'clock on a Friday, so you're ready to, grab a beer with some people, or you can pretty much wrap up what you're doing. But Allyson, you have one of those jobs here at HRP where you're kind of like going all the time here. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I work a lot with Donna. She does a lot of the proposals, and we work on RFPs together. I've been doing some of the archiving for any of our past work that we've done, so it definitely keeps me busy to be able to go in, edit anything that needs to be edited, format anything that needs to be formatted, and being able to put in whatever information that we need so that we can track the job later for billing purposes or things like that. It's really interesting to be able to learn about bid searching and really being able to learn about the industry that we're in, because it's I've never done anything like this before. It's my first job. I don't have an engineering background or our industry background, so it's been a lot of learning for me, and it's been a really cool process to be able to be like, I'm understanding the terminology, and I'm getting to know like the lingo and things like that, especially with certain phase one jobs and things like that. There's certain terminology that I'm constantly seeing within proposals, so it's becoming more and more familiar to me as time goes on.
Mm. Yeah, I remember a similar process for me, picking up a lot of that coming in, having no kind of background or experience with it at all, and kind of getting to know things, over the years, because I did start in kind of an administrative position myself, and I think that's another one of the things that demonstrates the values we have here at HRP, is that you can start in one spot, and then you kind of find your niche or the thing that you love, doing here, and you really do have the opportunity to pursue it and go after it,
Yeah, that's definitely something that starting my career I really wanted, because within marketing and communication, it's such a broad field. Like, you can really do anything with it. So I really wanted to be able to kind of hone in on what I specifically loved about marketing, because I knew that I loved researching things. I liked editing and reading, but I also really liked the creative aspect of content creation and being able to make your mark and things like that. So this has been a great opportunity for me to really be able to dip my toe in and be able to get a wider view of what I want to do with my career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's about time for a drink check. Alston, what do you got?
Yeah.
I have Fisher Island spiked lemonade. I've never tried this before. I only had a little sip beforehand, and it's pretty good.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's a classic warm weather drink for sure.
For sure.
Bubba, what do we got going on over here?
All right. So last night I went to Coles Road Brewing in Berlin, Connecticut, and I picked up a
label's pretty
crowler of one of their signature beers. The Sky Was Yellow, and I am going to enjoy this with Tom. We are going to split it. So, oh yeah, home. Luckily, I'm not fancy. I'll just wipe it on my pants.
So this is kind of a sample of an idea that you've been
Pour yourself one.
brewing up.
Yeah, so I did a little research, and I found out that there's approximately 120 breweries in Connecticut.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've been to maybe
Not
6. Yeah, maybe 6. But I think I'm going to go to more and start checking some off.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I figured maybe maybe once a month I'd swing by and bring in another sample.
Oh, yeah.
And
Let's do
we
it.
could talk about the brewery.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, cheers.
Hey, cheers.
Cheers.
I hope you like this, Tom. I thought about you when I got it.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's not bad, huh?
That's pretty good. Yeah.
So, yeah, the brewery's in Berlin on Farmington Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
and it's right near the railroad tracks. So actually, while you're sitting in the brewery, the train goes by, and you can see it through the windows, and you kind of hear it too, but
Yeah.
only when it's quiet in the brewery. But
Feel the table shake a little bit.
a little bit, yeah. But that just might be me.
You know, so many of those breweries, up in this area at least, are in former brownfields sites. I don't know how much you guys know about the brownfields program that we do. We're doing a lot of work in there. I've actually been able to do some work in that field myself by helping out with the grant writing portion of that, which actually you might be interested in getting involved with. It's really cool stuff. But yeah, we do have a lot of crossover with clients that end up being breweries, so maybe there's some extra stuff we can do there with that.
Yeah, it's, I've noticed that too. You go to some of these breweries and they're in, former industrial buildings or that kind of situation. And I'm not sure. This one looks like it might have been a machine shop, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But the interior's, it's obviously really nice now.
Mm-hmm.
They opened a couple of years ago, and yeah, if you go down, the bartender, I don't know his name, but he was like super nice. They had a food truck. I believe they do food trucks every like Thursday, Friday, Saturday kind of situation.
Yeah.
They have an outside deck. But the beers that I tried last night, the few beers, were pretty awesome. So they have a couple of stouts that were absolutely tremendous. And they had like 15 beers on tap. So it's pretty, that's a good list.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'll be going back again.
Mm-hmm. See, when you originally sent me your thoughts on the idea, I was thinking that we would do like remote podcasts from different breweries. I thought that's what you meant.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm down.
We should definitely do that. I can think of one where we'd probably be able to make that happen.
Yeah, it's actually kind of close to an office.
Yeah.
Like, very close. Like if you stomp on the floor of the office, it's kind of rattling around the brewery.
So our other Connecticut office is in Derby, Connecticut, in the same kind of general, actually I believe it's a former brownfields complex, is Bad Sons Brewing, which is a great brewery with a really cool outdoor area. We've actually have another video, I believe it's called A Day in Derby, on the YouTube channel, where we held a little event there. So if you want to get a sense of how much fun it is to hang out at this place where our office just happens to be, take a look at that video and let us know what you think. I think we need to get down there at some point for sure.
I think it has to be soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you tell me. I'm ready to roll.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously not today, but
We'll get it set up for sure.
yeah, we should make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, I was going to say that also. Maybe we should get some footage at other, breweries. I don't know how in depth you want to get with it.
Yeah.
But you can always add this to the Play Hard section of our YouTube stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Could be a whole series. The Brew Boys.
Absolutely.
I like it.
The Brew Boys.
I like
Just
it.
get T-shirts made up.
Get a nice, good mug.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I have a good mug. Yes, we're going to be getting new mugs again.
Yeah, we got to
we're
going to
do another order.
Yeah.
Yes. So a couple of years ago, so you can't see it much with the beer in it, but we were doing our Relay for Life event, and we were doing fundraising, and one of our employees, Gunner, found this website where you can order personalized mugs and personalized wine glasses, and they weren't expensive. I mean, this is a pretty tremendous mug. I mean, it's a nice, big, solid mug.
It's heavy, too. You could do some damage on a person with that.
And so the first initial order we did, we were able to raise quite a bit of money off of the fundraiser. So it says, you can't really see it with the beer here, but it says it has your initial, your name, whatever name you wanted to put. Mine obviously says Bubba.
Yep.
And then it has a banner that says it's 312 somewhere. And it also, I don't know if I can see it. I thought it said the date. Oh, it does. Right under
the date on it?
Right under the initial, it says the date of your hire.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so cute.
So this mine is Bubba B in 1986, where you guys weren't even born. And it's 312 somewhere. So, and the wine glasses, there are a couple of, sorry, I did a Dan there.
Yep. Got to stay on that mic.
The wine glasses are pretty nice too. And if you wanted to see what those look like, Deborah already has one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I've seen those around the office.
Yeah. So we're thinking of doing that again because we've had so many new people start with us, and this is just, it's a great mug. And it's one of my favorite mugs because it's so solid.
Great to bring it out on Oktoberfest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. Plus, you don't have to put your name on your solo cup because you got your own mug.
It's already there.
Exactly.
Well, we don't have to worry about not having done that.
That's right. Oh, that awkward silence.
I'm not that much of a beer gal, but I'll certainly be interested in wine.
Well, you could drink whatever you want in it.
Yeah.
So.
Actually,
can let's do that one more time because I can cut to it. Yeah.
I'm not that much of a beer girl, but I do enjoy some wine.
Oh,
you had a response.
I did?
Yeah, I thought you said something afterwards.
You can drink anything in it.
You can drink anything.
You can drink anything in these.
Completely unscripted, folks. One take all the way through. Don't worry about it.
I think you should put that in
or leave this
exactly
all
as
going
it
in
happened.
exactly. Yes.
You see the way Tom pushes us around? All for quality footage.
First time Alston nails it.
content.
Bubba, who's been here, who should know better.
I don't know better, but I think everybody out there knows I don't know better.
You gotta roll with it.
Old enough to know better, young enough to not care.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Young in spirit.
That's it. Young in spirit.
I'm young in body, old in spirit.
I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up.
No. Hopefully we'll probably never find out.
Yeah, probably not.
Same here.
No.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're going to keep this one a pretty short one because the value statement recording went pretty long, and I think we're going to keep pretty much all of it in there because it was really good conversation.
Oh,
but
I thought he was going to share some with us, didn't you?
A little bit. I thought he was going to be like, so what do you want out of your company, Allyson? You're a new girl here. You're fresh out of school. What were your expectations when you graduated? That was a lot of the things that people were asking me when I first graduated. It was like, what are you looking for in a company? What do you want for your future for the next 40, 50 years?
Yeah.
And I was always like, I'm not sure. Like I always wanted a place where I could grow, where I could have the freedom to kind of, if I wanted to take a turn, I could take a turn. If I wanted to go into a different department, I had the ability to grow, horizontally rather than vertically, because I don't always want to grow, have vertical growth. Sometimes I want to have a different skill set. I want to learn different things. When I was first looking at jobs, an interviewer actually told me, wow, I think that you should start looking into some HR roles, because your skill set and how you speak, it's very, you have a skill set for somebody who would be in our HR generalist role. And I had never really considered it before, but it certainly is something that I would be interested in possibly in the future if I take that path. But I want a company that's going to be able to let me grow and be able to say, hi, we have this option. Let's try something out. Let's try something new. And I think that's definitely something that HRP is great at, and they're giving me a lot of opportunity.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well said. Thank you, Allyson.
We got you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Bubba, what
Yes,
do you
sir.
got?
What do I got about what?
Same question.
What was the question?
What were
I've had half a beer. What was the question?
Leave us on with some of your wisdom.
Oh,
What
I
wisdom
don't
would
have a whole
you
lot of
impart
wisdom.
to new people, people wanting to learn something about HRPs with all of the experience and time that you've had here?
You're talking to a
okay.
fresh grad. What would you tell them?
First of all, don't be afraid to ask anybody anything. We're here to help, just like you. We're all pulling on the same rope, seriously. And that's the thing about HRP is everybody's willing to like give you a hand with whatever you need.
Yes.
Because we're all gonna like either succeed or fail together. I mean that's the way this company is, and that's the way we've always been. There's no real separate teams. It's all one big HRP team. That's the way I look at it, and that's one of the reasons that I'm still here. Well, that and they let me stay, but it's don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to try a little something new. And that's like you were just saying. Here we're open to you. If you want to learn this, you want to learn that, do it. Go for it. We're going to encourage you. We're going to support you, and that's the way this company is. And I mean, can't wish for anything more, I think. So
Awesome. And with that, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. And if you're still listening to us instead of watching us, please rate, leave a review if you have the time. Helps us out so much. Come back every Wednesday for a new video and a new podcast each month. And subscribe to the PFAS Pulse for the podcast episodes and the latest updates on PFAS if you're one of the many people or industries affected by PFAS, which at this point is pretty much everybody, so you need to be subscribed. And with that, we will talk to you later. Bye.
take care.
Bye.